Hey, Andrew.
Hi, Adriana.
Hey, welcome to RevJobs. I'm super excited to chat with you today. Hello to everyone that is logging in. Super awesome that you're here with us today. Just so that way you guys know a little bit about me. My name is Adriana. I'm the community manager here at RevGenius. And we have super cool free events like this multiple times a week. So if you're not already a member, check out revgenius.com. Andrew, would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. I know you're a fractional CMO, growth advisor for startups, demand gen expert, digital marketer, but would love to hear a little bit just about you.
Sure. So I've been doing marketing for about 15 years. My last full-time role was a CMO at a Series B tech company that ended in December. And since then, I've been doing marketing consulting work and some fractional work where
Mm,
I'm sort of a part-time head of marketing for different startups. And
nice.
that's been fun. I'm learning a lot doing it. So.
Definitely. That is awesome. Definitely. So we have a couple of really cool topics today. So really what I want to definitely make sure we cover, besides any questions from the audience, are your thoughts on switching industries, which is something that you've done a couple of times. Also, just your thoughts on how marketing has evolved, how to use your platforms to break through the noise in your job search, and just kind of like the state of marketing hiring as a whole right now, I think is another question that's just on a lot of people's minds. So, would definitely love to hear a little bit about your job history, your experience switching industries, and what you feel like that's kind of changed for you in terms of how you look at marketing.
Sure. So I started out doing marketing on my own. A lot of it was sort of B2C. I did a lot of affiliate marketing early on, built a website, used SEO to build traffic, and built an email list and sold coaching and different training programs to it. Then, when I was around 31 years old, I decided I'm going to transition into a more traditional marketing career.
Mm,
So at that point, I got a job at a marketing agency. I wasn't there that long, but it was helpful because the agency had about 6 or 7 different clients, and I got to kind of work with them. Some were B2C, some were B2B. So I got a lot of exposure there. After that, I worked at an ad tech slash e-learning company where I was one of the first marketing team members there.
mm,
So I also got to learn a bit about that industry. And I would say like doing marketing very early on when you're just building everything from scratch. After that job, and at this point, I was like 32, 33. I got a job at a supply chain slash logistics technology company.
mm,
And that company was sort of further along. It was bigger than my previous company. So there it was a lot more about kind of having a bigger budget and investing that wisely and growing pretty fast.
mm.
And then my last and most recent full time role was I was recruited to be a CMO at a Series B tech company. And in that role, I sort of got to kind of do it all over again in some ways where the company was earlier on. So that's been enjoyable.
Mm.
That was enjoyable as well. And I think working across these different industries, like one of the things I learned very quickly is how to figure out a new industry.
Yeah.
And for some reason, a lot of marketing jobs, and I think sales jobs are like that as well. They're looking for industry experience.
Hmm.
I think what a lot of sometimes recruiters or hiring managers don't realize too, though, is that it's not hard to learn an industry,
Yeah.
unless it's like a regulated industry. So, like if it's pharmaceuticals
Hmm.
or something like that, that's different. But for unregulated industries, they're pretty quick to learn, and there's kind of a few ways to learn them. But the more industries you work with, the more commonalities you find as well, and the more things you can sort of take, sort of transfer to future industries.
Hmm. Definitely. I know that you kind of mentioned something that I've run into a lot, which is that, okay, let's say you're interested in a job that is in another industry and you're applying. People will say, you don't really have the experience that we're looking for, something like that. And I know that that really does discourage a lot of people. So, what are some things that, like, if you're job searching, that you can do to kind of get ahead of those concerns, like in the interview process?
Sure. So there's a few ways to approach it. One is like you can, try to work with recruiters or apply through the job site or whatever the system they have. But at
Mm,
the same time, I would always try to guess who the hiring manager is. Sometimes it's listed, it'll say you'll report to so and so. Other times, just look at their LinkedIn. I always try to reach out to the hiring manager, anyways. Because when they're using a recruiter, recruiters just don't always sort of know exactly what the hiring manager wants, and then
yeah.
and hiring managers will always make exceptions for candidates that come across as sort of on top of kind of things and seem very
Mm,
resourceful and smart, and I think that's very important at early and mid-stage startups,
yeah.
because that's a lot of the challenges that you deal with. I'd always do that. You can look into industries, and quick ways to figure out industries is by looking up like industry publications and seeing what topics they
Mm,
cover,
mhm,
and just browsing their sites, and that'll quickly give you an idea. So like I did a lot of that when I started working in supply chain and logistics, because
mhm,
that's like a very deep industry.
yeah.
You can measure in that in college and stuff. So I had so that's a quick way to learn it, and just by knowing some of the hot topics or themes, that gives you an idea to kind of what's going on in the industry very quickly. So I think that, I think that helps. The other thing you can do too is just
Mhm,
connect with others who've been working in that industry for a while. So on the marketing side, if you find senior marketing people in that same industry, just reach out through LinkedIn. A lot of them are usually open to chatting for like 15 minutes, and you
mhm.
can just pick their brains. And sometimes too, like they'll be then able to introduce you to like open opportunities or other hiring managers who might be looking.
That's awesome. Okay, so I do want to get into a little bit of how to stand out in the interview process. So you kind of already mentioned like guess at who the hiring manager is to the best of your abilities. Make sure that you're kind of connecting with people on LinkedIn. But how does someone kind of get started? Being able to stand out online, like should you start posting on LinkedIn? Should you be commenting like crazy? Like is one better than the other? Talk to us about your thoughts on this.
Sure. So the best starting point is optimizing your own profile. So think of your profile as sort of like a landing page, and you're the product, so to speak. And it's the first thing a lot of people will look at, because when they search for your name or when
Mhm.
even they get your resume, a lot of hiring managers like to just go through LinkedIn first, even before reading a resume, because LinkedIn, like they know the format, they know they can go to your experience section and quickly
Yeah.
read it. And there's a lot of things you can do on your profile. So starting with like kind of that banner at the top, like if you design a nice banner or whatever that either highlights your experience or what's unique about you, that helps. Your headline helps. And then just even your experience section, just keep it bullet
Mhm.
points, focus on the impact you've made, and kind of keep it short and brief, and really target kind of hiring managers who are busy. So just keep it key points versus your resume where you can sort of go into more depth. So that's a good place to start, just optimizing your profile, because everything else
Mhm.
you do will also like lead people back to your profile.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a good place to start. After that, I think a good way to almost get like more engagement and more people
Mhm,
seeing your profile is by following bigger accounts or bigger creators who
mhm,
cover your industry topics. So if you're looking for a demand
mm,
generation type role,
yeah,
if you search for demand gen on LinkedIn or the hashtag demand generation, you'll see a lot of kind of the big creators posts come up. So follow those creators. You can also hit their kind of bell icon and get alerts, and then just comment on their posts.
mhm,
Over time, you'll have people engaging with your comments. You'll get people sending you connection requests, but it's also a good way to get visibility. And then once you're comfortable enough to, you can start posting on LinkedIn. But I would say that's kind of the last step, and it's not necessarily needed, because it takes more effort. Because if you're just engaging and commenting and just sending connection requests to other people too, and things like that, you'll quickly build a kind of a bigger network on LinkedIn.
awesome. So as someone who has hired a lot of people for marketing roles, like what are the most important things that candidates can do during the interview process to kind of make your short list?
Sure. So a lot of it is, I mean, obviously they should research the company and ideally to the person they're interviewing with beforehand. especially if they're like in a senior position, they've likely done some kind of media
Mhm.
or things like that. You just want to get a sense of their personality, just a lot of small things. It's not
Yeah.
different than doing like preparing for like a sales discovery call. It's kind of very similar. Like the other thing is you ideally want to just have some ideas that you can throw out there during the interview, because a lot of times for marketing positions, let's say you're interviewing for a growth marketing role, they'll be like, so what, they might just ask, what are some things you would do to, to drive growth for us, or ways you'd optimize our website or our ads or whatever. So you just want to have some ideas ready.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is that it's not just them interviewing you; it's also you interviewing them. So just be comfortable, almost like treating them as an equal, which a lot of like
Mhm.
senior people will respect. So ask questions, kind of push back too if you need to. Just don't feel like you just have to go along with kind of their line of questioning or sort of
Mhm.
their agenda for the entire time.
For sure. Awesome. So I do kind of want to talk about what's going on with marketing hiring, because obviously, like,
Sure.
the tech industry has been a little bit crazy. The layoffs have been a little bit crazy, and at least like from what I've seen, it seems to kind of have affected sales the most up until now. But I also know a lot of salespeople, so I might be biased in that assumption. But I'm curious to kind of like hear about like what you've seen from people. Is marketing being affected by these layoffs? Is hiring really being affected like it is with sales or recruiting? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, marketing is definitely being affected, and I think what happens too is like marketing jobs a lot of the times get cut like first or sooner,
Mm,
and then that puts a lot of pressure on sales. So then,
yeah,
like if sales aren't getting the right like resources or enablement or materials from marketing, they then have a hard time reaching their quotas or goals. So then, they're under pressure next, almost, and it becomes kind of cyclical in that sense. Um, I think if you have a marketing job at a bigger company, you're more at risk just because they have a lot more employees and their
yeah.
cuts are generally deeper. Whereas I think smaller companies, they are making cuts, but not as much. And I think smaller companies too, it's easier to like, like if you're even looking for a job, to message the hiring manager directly, get a hold of them, find someone in your network or someone who works at that company who can
Yeah.
introduce you. So I think with startups too, it is easier to kind of network your way into a job. Whereas like if you come from bigger companies,
Mhm.
those companies are just kind of a lot harder to break through. So I think yeah, I think if you're at startups, I think that gives you an advantage. And if you also have startup experience, it's easier. I think if you're coming from a big company, um, a lot of the times, like it's going to be harder for you to find a job at a startup because their concern is that, hey, this person always had a lot of resources and had a big team.
Mm,
Are they going to be
yeah,
successful in a startup?
got it. So what are your thoughts on like should people stay in software? Like should we be looking at other industries if we're currently job searching? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally love software and technology.
Mhm.
And it's also like when I look at other anything else, like I don't see other things growing as much. So I know like
Yeah.
hospitality for a while was doing well, after COVID and everything. But
Mhm.
even now, hospitality is slowing down.
Mm,
And even like I'm reading things about like airlines are now sort of seeing like a slowdown in people traveling and booking trips.
got it.
So I think like even when I look at other industries, I don't see kind of a lot of traction. And I think within software and tech, there are kind of trends that you can ride. So like a big one right now is AI.
Mhm.
So if you find like an AI company, like there's a lot of them. A lot of them are getting funding still.
Mhm.
So there are kind of trends and things like that that you can ride that can help you sort of find jobs.
Also, what is something that you see people doing wrong on their job search, especially just given like the current climate? What are the
Sure. So
mistakes that you see?
I think the most common one is just applying. Like if all you're doing is applying, that's just not
Mhm.
like because job applications now get hundreds of candidates and usually
Yeah.
you get them within like a day or two. So I think you want to be looking at like again figure out who the hiring manager is. See, you're likely going to share common connections or are going to be connected with someone who works at that company. And if you just start like kind of messaging those people or trying to connect with them, a lot of the times you can just kind of, like I mentioned, network your way into sort of get in front of the hiring manager. The other thing you should be doing too is really relying on like senior people in your network to help you find job opportunities. So if you're looking
Mm,
for a content marketing role, just go through your LinkedIn connections, connect with like directors, VPs, or C-level people you've worked with in the past, kind of ask how they're doing, and then just let them know, hey, I'm looking for this type of role. So if you come across
mhm.
anything, I'd appreciate you like keeping me in mind, or pinging me. Because if you can get a referral from someone else who's like also kind of senior in marketing, you're just going to kind of cut through the line basically.
Yeah.
And it works a lot better.
Awesome. So you have a post actually that I kind of want to talk about, which is in the post you say like, I've interviewed hundreds of candidates for marketing jobs. Here's one thing great candidates have in common. At some point in their career, they built and promoted their own online store, service business, personal brand. Great candidates have pursued one of these. Exceptional candidates have pursued two or three. Really curious about this, especially because we hear from a lot of people that, like, I have this side business or I'm trying to grow my personal brand. Like, I'm so worried about that affecting my job search. So tell us about like your experience with this and how it translates to hiring.
Sure. So I understand why people are concerned sometimes, but also like there is a cost to like not having done any of those things or not doing
Hmm.
them, especially building a personal brand, right? So on the one
Yeah.
hand, when you build a personal brand, it's almost like you now get a megaphone and you get to like share your ideas over time. You get people engaging with your ideas, and now you have like a small audience. I like to even think of it as a micro community where you can support each other.
Hmm.
um, so that in itself will generate some opportunities for you. So I've had sort of recruiters reach out to me directly with positions that are not even public yet, saying, hey, like I like reading your
Mm,
posts,
yeah.
and we're thinking about hiring a head of marketing, and I thought I'd just reach out because we don't even have a job description up yet.
Hmm.
So like something like building a personal brand will generate its own opportunities. It's also great if you ever want to do client type work or contract type work later
Hmm.
on, because you'll have people who trust you and know you. On the other hand, maybe sometimes you'll post on somewhat controversial topics, and a few people just will disagree or not like your point of view.
Yeah.
They might even try to argue with you in the comments, which is always fun. And again, maybe you turn off those people, but if you think about it, those are people you likely would not have gotten along with in a job
Yeah.
situation anyways, because if they disagree with you and they're feel strongly about certain things, you probably wouldn't have like wanted to work with them in the first place.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I think about it. There's kind of always kind of a pros, and then there is a cost to not doing it. The same as like try to build like an online store, or
Hmm.
other things. What it allows you to do too is just have additional experience that you can talk about in interviews. That sometimes you just can't get that experience from previous jobs. So like an
Yeah.
online store allows you to do like a lot of B2C things, and if you're interviewing for a B2C job, you can use that as
Mm,
experience if you just have like a B2B background, as
mhm.
far as full-time jobs.
That's awesome. So I do want to talk a little bit about finding companies that are going to work well for you, or just kind of screening like hiring managers and companies during the interview process. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what candidates can do to make sure that they don't end up somewhere where they don't really like agree with how marketing is being handled, or maybe just like the team is a little bit toxic. The work situations we all want to avoid.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I've had a mix of managers. It's kind of funny because
Mm,
once you have like an awesome manager, it's very hard to go back to working
yeah,
for like an average manager, because you realize like
spoiled forever.
what you're missing out on.
Mm,
So yeah, there's a few things I do think that like checking websites like Glassdoor and stuff
yeah.
is helpful. And on Glassdoor too, like I wouldn't care if there's like one or two negative reviews. It's more like when you see a pattern that, hey, over like the last 2 to 3 years, this company keeps getting negative reviews. That's usually not a sign. not a good sign. I like to actually reach out sometimes, like through LinkedIn, to people who used to work at that company
Mm,
in that department who are no longer there,
yeah.
and just kind of just message them and try to chat with a few of them if possible. And then the hiring manager themselves, I really like. I look at their LinkedIn and I'm trying to see if they had a like sort of a record of success from
Mm,
previous companies, right? So like
mm,
I'll look up companies they used to work at and try to figure out like how much that company grew in that period. Did they grow revenue? Um, was that company successful? Because if I see that, likely I know it's someone I'll be able to learn from
yeah.
and help me develop my own career. If I don't see that, then it might be someone who just hasn't been successful, and that's also sort of questionable. And then when you're interviewing with them too,
Mm,
I think just like if you just pay attention to how they come across or even how they run the interview, like if it's an interrogation style interview, that's likely someone you probably would even want to have one-on-ones with,
yeah.
or just work with altogether. Whereas like if it's a lot more, if at the end of the interview you just have a good feeling about them, like, hey, this was nice, and you feel like energized, that's likely someone you'd want to work with. So kind of those are kind of things I keep in mind.
Mm, for sure. That definitely makes a lot of sense. From a hiring manager perspective, like what do the best interviewers do in terms of like how they speak about their experience, what they can do within the interview to really like stand out from other candidates?
Sure. So I think when they speak about their experience, they tend to use like more examples and also like kind of share like the impact and things like that. Not just like I've done X, Y, Z, but
Mm,
I did this and here's the result. I think also like they use more stories because stories are just more engaging and memorable to the hiring manager. And when you think about it, the hiring manager is going to speak to like multiple people. So the more you stand out and the more memorable you are,
mm,
the more likely you are to progress to sort of the next stage. They also are not like afraid to admit when they don't know something, but they don't just kind of like leave it there. They,
yeah.
they'll answer in a way to show that they're still resourceful and they can figure it out.
Mm,
And in startups and kind of like smaller companies, that is key. It's not like no one will know everything, especially in marketing, but they just want to know that you can go and figure it out. So even if they don't know something, they can say that and they'd say, and then I'm part of these communities. So I'd find someone in the community who's done this and I would just get some advice from them. And when a
mm,
hiring manager hears that, they just know you're very resourceful and you'd be able to figure things out on your own.
awesome. I'm curious to know like what really excites you about marketing like over the next few years.
So I think marketing as a job is one of the kind of the most fun jobs out there
Mm,
because it is a mix of like data numbers, but then it's a mix of like consumer behavior, kind of interacting with people, communication, and it just blends so many things together
yeah.
that it's just a lot of fun. So like I feel like if you work in marketing, you just can't get bored, and there's always more to do and more to learn. And I think as far as kind of thinking about it futuristically, I think there is a lot of cool things happening with AI where
Mm,
you can almost use like something like Chat GPT to do like initial research for you,
yeah.
and save you some time from doing something like that manually, and then take the output and turn it into like a piece of content or a presentation or whatever you want to do with it. So I do think too that with AI and things like that, it's going to automate a lot of kind of the boring, more like grunt kind of work.
Awesome. Definitely really curious as well about AI. I feel like I don't know. It seemed like not very long ago that AI was this like weird, like amorphous, futuristic thing that was like AI is never going to be like writing our emails or anything, and it's already doing that, and it's just I don't know. It's kind of crazy to see.
Yeah, it feels like for a while, like a lot of companies were talking about AI, but like it was like almost behind the scenes,
Yeah.
like they'd say that their product is, using AI, but you didn't know. I
Mm,
think Chat GPT coming out and the fact that anybody could like use it and give it a prompt,
yeah.
I think that's what kind of made it like very, very mainstream now. So
For sure. Awesome. Well, if someone is interested in moving into marketing from another department, especially like sales or even customer success, like especially one of those roles that are very customer facing, like what things can they do to kind of prove that more technical side? Should they be taking classes? Like, is there a certification people should be pursuing? Tell us about that.
Sure. So I think if they're coming from customer success, they're going to have like an advantage if they pursue something like
Mm,
customer marketing, especially at their current company. Because to do customer marketing, you have to really know the customers and you have to have a good relationship with the
mhm.
customer success team. So that's actually something to a lot of even marketing leaders do is when they're looking for a customer success person, they'll see if there's, customer marketing person will see if there's
Mhm.
anybody in customer success who might be interested. So that's a
Oh.
good, yeah, that's a good path. And then I think if you're coming from sales, another good path is going down like demand gen route. So especially if you're like a
Mhm.
BDR, SDR, you're likely going to be pretty good at demand gen because you also
Yeah.
understand kind of like how to then take the leads and sort of convert them. So I think that's a pretty good path to take. And then as far as courses, you can do like there are like I like there are like a lot of things on like Udemy and sites like that that are good. There's a ton of courses out there, but I think a lot of it too just being part of communities where you're surrounded with people who do it,
Mhm.
because you'll pick like small things or almost like micro lessons when they share about a specific topic, and then just kind of following or connecting with those people on LinkedIn. So I know like so for like demand generation, like Chris Walker is kind of one of the most popular
Mhm.
people on LinkedIn who talks about it. So even just following Chris Walker and reading his posts, within like a month or two, you'll learn a lot more about demand gen, pretty quickly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I would love to learn just a little bit more about you, Andrew. Who are you? What do you do for fun? Um, Tell us about that.
Sure. So when I have free time, I love like attending live comedy shows, and I live in Chicago, which is a great city for that. So I like um, stand up comedy. I like improv comedy, which I took some classes in at some point just for fun. And I also like sketch comedy, so I like going to comedy shows. And I'm also like a big fan of just like food and trying different types of food, which
Mm,
again, Chicago is a great city for.
awesome. Well, if anyone wants to reach out with questions or anything like that, can they get in touch with you like on LinkedIn? Um, where should they reach out?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the best place. They can, send me a connection request, and also anybody on LinkedIn can DM me directly. So if they need anything, they're welcome to also DM me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so, so, so much for being here today, Andrew. Super appreciate it. Super awesome getting to chat with you about the marketing job search.
Thank you for having me on, Adriana. This was a fun conversation.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay.